It's the start of a brand new month, and so once again, that means that we're going to decide which one of these books we're going to be reading by spinning this. It's time to play Fiction Roulette. And so yeah, as always, I'm going to be letting the wheel decide what I'm going to be reading and reviewing for the month of September. The wheel is filled, as always, with a group of books which I'm excited to read every single one of them. I can't read all of them because, like everyone, I'm limited by the amount of time that I can spend reading. I'm not exactly the fastest reader in the world either, and so I have to make a decision. And I'm an indecisive person. I need these little tricks in order to help me decide. And so yeah, basically I spin the wheel 4 times, it lands on 4 different books, and then that way I get to know what I'm going to be reading for the month. And then on top of that, I'll also let you know what the channel's book club has chosen for all of us to read together for the PBJ Bookclub this month. And I'll also let you know how you can join in on that if you're interested at the end of the video. But anyway, let's start talking about what's on the wheel for the month of September. The first book I actually don't have a physical copy of, and that is The Lesser Dead by Christopher Buehlman. So this book is set in 1970s New York City. The way that I'm imagining the way that New York City is represented in this book in particular is the same way that it's represented in Taxi Driver. Do you remember that Robert De Niro movie from the 70s? Sort of bit grim, bit seedy, dangerous streets filled with crime. Oh, don't go down that way. And if you're from New York City, like, don't be offended by that, by the way, because I'm not saying that New York is like that. I would love to go to New York City. It's one of my dream locations, bucket list, must go before I die, you know? Anyway, forget all that for a second. We're talking about books. So desperately trying not to get my ass kicked by some New Yorker because I said something bad about Brooklyn. Anyway, the main character in this book is a guy called Joey Peacock, who was turned into a vampire when he was 14 years old. And now he appears as an adolescent, even though he's much older than that. Joey is part of this like vampire clique that all live underground in an abandoned subway. And in order to survive, they follow a strict set of rules on how and when to feed, just making sure that their victim is completely alone. So for example, they might stalk someone through Central Park at night, or they might get a cab driver to take them into a secluded area, just to make sure that they're never caught in the act. But one day, this group of vampires come across another set of like vampire children who don't follow any rules, and they just seem insatiably hungry, almost like they're a different kind of a creature, and it starts to put everyone else in danger within the vampire community. I came across this book suggestion when I read The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones last month, and in his acknowledgements, he spoke about this book and how much he liked it. It was just raving about it. So I went, all right, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go. Because I really liked The Buffalo Hunter. And so hopefully this is as good as that. The next book I'd love to read is No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. If you haven't read this book, you might have seen the movie with Josh Brolin, Tommy Lee Jones, and Javier Bardem. Javier Bardem is so scary in that film. He's amazing in it. I think that was the first thing that I'd ever seen him in. And I was just like, who is this psycho? This is about a guy in Texas who late one night comes across this massacre, and there's like a pickup truck that is surrounded by dead bodies. And, you know, if that's me in that scenario, hello, police. I'm not involved in this, but this dude, he's like a rough, tough Texan. Do you know what I mean? So he's like, all right, let me take a closer look. So he goes over to the truck, and in the back of the truck, he finds a bag of heroin and $2 million in cash. And then he says, right, I'm gone. And he puts as much distance between himself and this massacre as possible. But then it's not long before he realizes that he's being hunted down by a very dangerous man, as well as the local sheriff. It's like this crazy cat and mouse game. Like I said, I really love the film. I've read a few Cormac McCarthy novels recently, and I've really enjoyed all of them. And so this one seems like an obvious choice. The next book I'd really like to read is Anxious People by Frederik Backman. So Anxious People is about a collection of strangers who are viewing an open house in this city in Sweden. I don't know if it's Stockholm. I think it's like an unnamed city in Sweden. And as they're viewing this open house, an armed man enters the building and he's just failed to rob a bank and he's on the run from the cops. And so he just says, all right, I'm taking everyone hostage. The hostages are a mix of just ordinary people with like messy lives. There's an elderly woman. There's a couple that are fighting about money. There's a young pregnant girl. There's obviously the real estate agent that's hosting the open house. And then on the other side of town, you've got two police officers who are also like a father and son, and they get pulled into the case and they try and figure out what happened through interviewing all of the people that were there that were taken hostage. And so like the story kind of jumps back and forth in time from the hostage situation to the police interviews that happen afterwards and all of the backstories of everyone that's involved. I'm a little bit of a fan of Frederik Backman. He writes some of the best like feel-good books that I've ever read. I really loved A Man Called Ubik. I really liked Beartown as well, although the rest of the series after Beartown, the next two books, sort of like giving me like diminishing returns, I didn't like them quite as much. But anyway, I do like Frederik Backman a lot. I've also read a few of his short stories. He's someone that I can pretty reliably turn to when I need a little bit of cheering up. And on the wheel this month, I've actually included a handful of feel-good books because spooky season is just around the corner. And during October, I read a lot of very dark, weighty literature. I mean, I love it. I love horror books. I love it all dark and grim and all that. But by the end of the month, I often feel like quite heavy. I'm like, like I've been through something. And so this is really my last chance of reading something uplifting before we all step into the shadows together. Next book I'd love to read is Ubik by Phillip K. Dick. This book has been on the wheel before, quite recently, maybe even last month it might have been on the wheel. It's supposed to be a bit of a trippy sci-fi. This book is about Glenn Runsiter, who runs a company that basically acts as like psychic security, and all of his people that work for his company shut down telepaths that are hired to snoop on corporate secrets. But during what should have been like a really routine, simple job, everything goes sideways and Runsiter is ambushed, he's nearly killed, and then he sort of gets dropped into this weird half-life state where he can still talk to the living and everything like that, but only in flashes. Like, this one just sounds so crazy, but so many people have recommended it to me. And there are people in the comment section where they usually have like good taste when it comes to sci-fi. And so I'm just putting this on the wheel based on trust. I really can't describe exactly what this book is about. Plus it's by Phillip K. Dick as well, right? So that sort of like makes you feel confident that it's going to be high quality. But yeah, it just sounds like reality is all being reshaped. No one knows what's real. A few days ago, I just got finished with There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. I went into that book equally just blind. And I'm glad that I gave it a chance because it ended up being one of my favorite books from last month. So I feel like if I enjoyed that, I took a chance and it paid off, and I'd like to do the same again, please. Another book, which I don't have a physical copy of, is Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So this book is supposed to be like a nice mixture of science fiction and fantasies where the two genres and the two worlds meet. I've read some sci-fi from Tchaikovsky, and I've read Spiderlight as well. So I know he can write both sci-fi and fantasy very well. The main character in this book is called Lynessie. It's either pronounced Lynessie or Lyness, I'm not sure. And she is the daughter of a queen. She's sort of like the black sheep of the family. She's always like wrong place, wrong time. One day when a demon terrorizes and threatens her homeland, this young girl heads to this old tower on the edge of town where this sorcerer lives. Only when she meets him, he claims that he's not a sorcerer, he's a scientist, and he doesn't believe in demons and all this fantasy stuff. This is a pretty short book, probably one that I can read in a day. It's supposed to have, like I said, a nice blend of sci-fi and fantasy. And Tchaikovsky's just another, like Philip K. Dick, he's another one of these authors that I just trust based on his name, based on the previous books that I've read by him. I keep meaning to read The Children of Time. I still haven't read that book. Everyone keeps telling me, you've got to read The Children of Time, it's so good. I will soon. It's been sitting on my shelf for ages. But for this month, Elder Race is up on the wheel. So let's see. Another book I'd love to read in September is The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. This is, once again, another book where I don't quite know how to describe it. That's sort of what I liked about it. And so instead of trying to describe it, what I'm going to do is just read the back of the book so you get an idea. Caroline knows she's a bit odd, but she figures that's only natural when she spent her life locked away in an infinite library, forced to study at the feet of a man who might be God. She's seen her share of terrible things in those years, even died a few times herself. Steve tries hard to be an ordinary guy, and he's been doing a pretty good job at it until Caroline shows up in his life with a tempting offer. A pair of red rubber galoshes and exactly $327,000. Soon he finds himself swept up in a war waged on a scale he can barely comprehend, as powerful forces battle for control of the library and the future of the universe itself. Brilliantly plotted, blackly funny, truly epic in scope, and featuring a cast of characters that includes a tutu-clad psychopath, a malevolent iceberg, and a lion named after an atomic bomb. The Library at Mount Char is this year's most ambitious and acclaimed fantasy debut, and a ride like none you've been on before. I love that they do, like, it starts off with like a synopsis and then it starts turning into a sales pitch. Look, I'm going to read it. So yeah, it sounds pretty weird as well. I'm going through a bit of a weird fiction phase at the moment. About a month ago, I went through the phase of like a kids on bikes, nostalgic childhood memories kind of phase where I was reading like Boy's Life and Summer of Night and the Saturday Night Ghost Club and all these titles. And now it feels, I guess I'm sort of like turning the ship towards just mental mind-bendy books that don't make very much sense, but are very exciting. That doesn't mean I'm totally turning my back on the kids on bikes, though. Look, let's see what's up next. Stephen King, The Body. So this is the book that inspired the movie Stand By Me, which I think came out in like the mid-80s, maybe early 90s. But the book is actually set back in the 1960s in Castle Rock. I don't know how many Stephen King books are set in Castle Rock. It's got to be at least 7. I don't know. But anyway, there's a lot going on in Castle Rock, it seems like. In this book, a kid named Ray Brower goes missing, and 4 12-year-old boys decide that they're going to go and find his body by following the train tracks that lead outside of town. What starts off as a sort of like a boyish adventure where they're all having a laugh with each other and just sort of like enjoying this childhood wonder, it sort of turns into something a little bit heavier. And along the journey, all the boys start having these conversations about death and grief and the problems that they have within their families and the grim reality of their little factory town that isn't really promising a bright future for them. Like maybe their town is dying too. It's like classic Stephen King. Do you know what I mean? Not in the horror sense, but more in that raw sense of nostalgia about being young, feeling stuck, and a coming-of-age book where you just start to realize that the world might not be as kind as you thought it was when you were younger. Here's another book I'd love to read, Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shirley Van Pelt. So this is probably another one of those books that I'd put into the category of uplifting books before I start reading all of that horror in October. This is about a woman named Tova who has been working the night shift in an aquarium as, I think, like a janitor, and her son mysteriously went missing 30 years ago. And so now she just tries to keep as busy as she can as a way to distract herself. You know, like I say, very uplifting. But then Tova starts to spark up a kind of like a strange friendship with this giant octopus named Marcellus in the aquarium that she works in. I could be wrong about this, but I think the book is mostly told from the perspective of Marcellus, who is sort of a genius, and he's starting to piece together what happened to Tova's son. I really like the idea of this one. It sounds really original and, like I say, not too heavy. And then if it lands on one of these little dark patches here, you can see they're on either side, then I'm going to read The Two Towers. This is the complete Lord of the Rings collection. It's got the entire trilogy there. You can see the little ring behind me there. You see the ring over there? You see the Hobbit and the Silmarillion there. But yeah, this is the complete collection of the Lord of the Rings. So far, I've only read the first book. I'd love to read The Two Towers. So yeah, that's everything that's on the wheel. Now let's spin the wheel and see what the first book is that we're going to be reading in September. Oh, that light's a bit too shiny. Actually, just before I spin this, I want to take a moment to thank everyone that supports the channel through the Patreon. A big thank you to the cult members. A massive thank you to the named men, and an extra special thank you to the quartet. All of you make this channel possible, and I'm so glad that we get to build this reading community together. Seriously, thanks so much for being a part of it. And if you would like to support this channel and get some perks like the Metallic Paperback Journeys bookmark, access to some of the exclusive rooms on the Discord server, and also access to the PBJ Bookclub, then you can click on the link in the description below. All right, so I'm going to spin this wheel now 4 times, and then after that, I'm going to tell you what the PBJ Bookclub chose for September. So we're going to do this, get 4 books, and then that'll make up the 5th book that I'm going to definitely be reading for this month. All right, let's spin the wheel. Ubik. So, by the way, I should always mention, and I always forget, we go by this thing here, right? This is the decider, this little thing. So, Ubik. All right. So, it's finally come up on the wheel now, and I'm going to get to discover what you lot have all been talking about with this book, because you guys were the ones that recommended this book. If I don't like it, that means we have to break up. I'm sorry, we got to see other people. All right, anyway, let's go again. Oh, Elder Race. See, remember, like, you might think, oh, the library at Mount Char. No, remember the rules. Elder Race. So that's a nice short one. So it might turn out that I can read more than the 4 or 5 books that we talk about today, because this is one that I might be able to read in, like I say, like maybe a day. I can read that. All right, so let's spin again. Oh, The Lesser Dead by Christopher Buehlman. So this is a vampire story set in New York City. Great. Well, that's funny as well, because some people might think I should have saved that for October, but in all honesty, I read horror all year round. All right, now let's spin it for the fourth and final time. Oh, look at that. It just held on. It's The Library at Mount Char. Here's what I'm going to say. By the end of September, I think my brain is going to be different. Because that's a lot of weird fiction that I'm going to be reading. I put so many little happy books on there. Like I put a handful in there anyway, and none of them came up. The wheel's like, no happiness for you. You're going to get psychologically damaged just before you start reading nothing but horror. Good. Okay, so those are the 4 books that I'm going to be reading for the month of September. What were they again? The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins, Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky, Ubik by Phillip K. Dick, and The Lesser Dead by Christopher Buehlman. Here's the question though. Out of all these books, do you think that you can guess what I'm going to be rating each one of these? If you think you can do it, then you can go over to the Discord, and if your guesses are the most accurate, then you will win an Amazon voucher. And maybe you'll finally, one of these days, buy yourself a book. It's been long enough. It's been a while since you last bought a book. You need to treat yourself. So yeah, you can do that by playing the rating game. Like I say, over on the Discord. So yeah, you can find the Discord in the link in the description. And now the moment has come where I reveal to you what the PBJ Bookclub has chosen for the month of September. And that book is, I don't have it. I need to go get it from the shelf. Excuse me 1 second. And that book is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. And by the way, what a cover. This book comes in so many different beautiful editions. This was one of my favorites. I think I actually have 2 copies of this book. I've also got a Penguin classic of this book as well. Yeah, another really weird looking cover, very colorful, very beautiful. So yeah, if you're interested in reading along with the book club, it's not too late. These are the dates that we're going to be reading and discussing all of the chapters of the book. I'll put a link to the Patreon in the description box below if you're interested in signing up for that. This is also the perfect time to vote on what the book club will be reading for October too. So you can see all of the options on there. We have gone this month for all horror books just because, you know, it's Halloween, isn't it? Halloween. So there's going to be 5 horror books to choose from there. I think they're all pretty highly critically acclaimed horror books, and a lot of them came out within the last 10 years. So yeah, some fresh horror there. If you're interested in seeing what I read last month and what I thought of those books, then you can click up there to see that video. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And as always, happy reading.